Wacky Wednesday.
Urban legends of all kinds have passed through generations, scaring kids half to death, the following being no exception to that. From the ghost of a baby heard crying to an alien abduction and a woman that appears in your mirror if you call her name 3 times. We take a look at 20 of the creepiest urban legends from around the world. Number 20. The Well to Hell. Sometime in 1989, Russian scientists in Siberia drilled a borehole some 15 kilometers deep into the Earth's crust. The drill broke through into a cavity and the scientists lowered some equipment to see what was down there. The temperature was more than 1000 degrees Celsius, but the real shocker was the sound recorded by their instruments. They only captured about 17 horrifying seconds of audio before the microphone melted. Convinced that they had heard the screams of the damned in hell. Many of the scientists quit their job immediately, or so at least the story goes. Those who stayed were in for an even bigger shock later that night, when a plume of luminous gas burst out of the borehole. The shape of a gigantic winged demon unfolded and the words, "I have conquered" in Russian were said into the flames. And the Well to Hell urban legend remains alive 25 years later to this day. Number 19. Crybaby Bridge. According to this legend, a couple was driving home from church with their baby arguing about something. The rain was falling in torrents and they soon found themselves having to drive over a flooded bridge. As they started to cross, the water was deeper than they first thought, so they got stuck and decided to get out of the car to find help. The woman stayed behind but left the car for reasons we can only guess at. While her back was turned to the car, she heard her baby crying out loudly. She returned to the vehicle only to find that her baby had been carried away by the water. And according to the same legend, if you go to that same bridge today, you can still hear the baby crying. Number 18. CHAR-MAN. A well-known urban legend in California comes from Camp Comfort County Park. They say a spirit of a man burnt in a fire will emerge from the forest and attack cars and hikers. He is called CHAR-MAN because the majority of his face and body could be described as extra crispy. There are several versions of CHAR-MAN's origin, but they all begin with a wildfire that occurred in the park in 1948. The main story goes that a father and son were caught in a blaze and the older man was killed, but the son survived, and when the rescue team arrived they found that he had strung up his father and pulled off his skin. He then disappeared into the woods, and it is said that if you drive onto the bridge located in the park and get out of your car, CHAR-MAN will come and get you. The horribly burned man will run at you and attack, trying to tear off your skin, perhaps to take as his own. Number 17. Goatman. Some urban legends are created by adults that want to scare the living bejeebers out of their kids into behaving. Other stories are more likely to have been made up by your older brother who just wants to freak you out. Such is the case of the Goatman in Beltsville, Maryland. But who is Goatman, you may be asking? There is no official story, but most claim a scientist at the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center did experiments on goats. This somehow led him to actually becoming part goat, a kind of animal-human hybrid. He is said to roam the backwoods of Fletchertown Road attacking people and cars with his axe. Number 16. The SNALLYGASTER. In the 1730s, German immigrants in Frederick County, Maryland claimed to have encountered a terrifying creature. Shortly after founding their town, the residents began reporting sightings of a beast that was half bird, half reptile, with a beak made of metal with razor-sharp teeth. It also sported tentacles like an octopus that it used to seize people and carry them away, presumably to feed its own babies. When you first hear this story, it's easy to scoff at, but the plot thickened a bit for residents when sightings of these creatures were reported everywhere from New Jersey to Ohio. Number 15. ELISA Day. In medieval Europe, there apparently lived a young woman named ELISA Day, whose beauty was like that of wild roses that grew down the river, all bloody and red. One day, a young man came into town and instantly fell in love with ELISA. They dated for 3 days, and on the first day, he visited her at her house. On the second, he brought her a single rose and asked her to meet him down where the wild roses grow. On the third day, he took her down to the river where he killed her. The horrible man supposedly waited till her back was turned, then took a rock in his fist, whispering, "All beauty must die." And with one swift blow, he killed her instantly. He then placed a rose between her teeth and slid her body into the river. Some claim to have seen her ghost wandering the riverside, blood running down the side of her head, a single rose in her hand. Number 14. Dog Boy. In 1954, Gerald Floyd Bettis was born to Floyd and Aileen Bettis in what has since been named the Bettis House. Those who knew him claim he used to catch dogs and cats and keep them in his home as a young boy. But he wasn't plain veterinarian, instead he would horribly torture and kill the animals. But what he is really known for is his treatment of his parents. The story goes that he imprisoned them in the attic, keeping them there for years. According to police reports, he did abuse his parents quite badly, but wasn't arrested for it until the death of his father and the continued abuse of his mother. He died in prison of a drug overdose, and since then, people have claimed that paranormal activity is common in the house. Flickering lights, strange noises, and moving objects have all been reported. Number 13. The Greek Soldier. This lesser-known legend tells us of a Greek soldier who, after World War II, was returning home to marry his fiancée. Unfortunately for him, he was captured by fellow Greeks who had hostile political beliefs, tortured for 5 weeks, and finally eventually murdered him. In the early 1950s, mainly in North and Central Greece, there were stories about a very attractive Greek soldier in uniform who appeared and then disappeared overnight, seducing beautiful widows and virgin girls with the sole purpose of impregnating them. 5 weeks after the babies were born, the man would disappear for good, leaving a letter on the table explaining that he had returned from the dead merely to spread his seed, so that his sons one day might avenge his murder. Number 12. The Black Volga. The Black Volga automobile was supposedly spotted frequently in the streets of Warsaw back in the 1960s, packed with kidnappers who were bent on snatching children. According to the legend, high-ranking Soviet officials drove the Black Volga in Moscow during the mid-1930s, kidnapping young pretty girls for sexual pleasure of the highest-ranking Soviet comrades. Another version of this legend tells us that vampires, mysterious priests, Satanists, body vendors, and even Satan himself drove the Black Volga car. According to different versions, children were kidnapped with the intention of using their blood as a cure for rich leukemia sufferers from around the world. Number 11. Green Man. This is one of the few stories on the list that can be traced back to a real person, including the more frightening details in Capel, Pennsylvania. It became common to see a horribly disfigured man walking down the darkened streets at night. He was given the name Charlie No Face or Green Man, and everyone had their own story of sighting him. That's because he was 100% real. Born Raymond Robinson in 1910, at the age of 8 he was trying to view a bird's nest on a bridge when there was an accident. He touched a power line which electrocuted him, causing horrific facial injuries that never properly healed. Because his appearance tended to cause panic and make babies cry, he spent most of his 74 years hiding out in his home with his family. But at night, he would make the streets his own by taking long walks when people were less likely to see him. Obviously, this didn't work all the time, hence he became a living urban legend in his own town, where some people used to drive around all night hoping to catch a glimpse of the Green Man. Number 10. The White Death. This is a story about a little girl in Scotland who hated her life so much that she wanted to destroy every last trace of herself. She finally decided to commit suicide, and shortly afterwards her family found out what she had done. In a horrible twist, every member of her family died only a few days later too, their limbs torn apart. The legend says that when you learn about the White Death, the girl's ghost might come and find you and knock repeatedly on your door. Each knock gets louder till you open the door and she kills you for the fear that you'll tell someone else of her existence. Her main goal was to prevent anyone from knowing about her, and like most urban legends, the story is probably nothing more than the wild imagination of a deranged woman from the 1980s. But it's always good practice to find out who's standing behind your door. Number 9. Patterson Road. One of the creepiest stories is centered around Patterson Road, located near Highway 6. The claims here tend to differ depending on who you ask. However, everyone agrees that the ghosts involved were the Civil War soldiers. Because, as we all know, every bit of land someone from that period walked across has become a ghostly hotspot by default. Believers say that if you go onto the Langham Creek Bridge on Patterson at night and park your car with your lights off, you will hear tapping or see a mist surround your car. More skeptical locals will point out that parking your car with your lights off on a busy bridge is a good way to become a ghost yourself. Number 8. ZANFRETTA alien abduction. According to his own accounts, originally made under hypnosis, ZANFRETTA was abducted by aliens called Dragos from the planet Teutonia, and experienced repeated abductions by the same group over a period of several years from 1978 to 1981. As frightening or creepy as this might sound, it seems like we can paint a more optimistic picture of the intentions of these visitors when we consider the words of ZANFRETTA during one hypnosis section. He says, "I know you are trying to come more frequently. No, you can't come to Earth. People get scared if they look at you. You can't make friendship. Please go." ZANFRETTA has probably given more details about his alien abduction than any other person in history. His detailed accounts may even cause the most skeptical person to pause for thought. And to this day, the ZANFRETTA case remains one of the most curious and fascinating X-Files from around the world. Number 7. Bobby Mackey's Hell Portal. Bobby Mackey's Music World is a popular honky-tonk bar in the Wilder, Kentucky, owned by country singer Bobby Mackey. There are 3 associated urban legends that have become so popular they are now considered a selling point for the establishment. The first is that there is an actual portal to hell located in the Well Room, which allows demons to come into our realm. As for the 2 other stories, they are more traditional hauntings. First, you have Pearl Bryan, a real pregnant woman who was found decapitated in the late 1800s. Her lover Scott Jackson and his friend Alonzo Walling were hanged for her murder. Second is the legend of a woman named Joanna who is said to have fallen in love with a singer at the club that used to exist behind Music World. Her angry father supposedly hanged her lover in his dressing room, leading her to poison herself in retribution. Bobby Mackey wrote a song about the incident which strongly suggests she still haunts this bar. Number 6. The Slit-Mouthed Woman. There is a legend in Japan and China about a girl known as the Slit-Mouthed Woman. Some say that she was a wife of a samurai. One day she cheated on her husband with a younger and better looking man. When the husband returned, he discovered her betrayal. Enraged and furious, he took his sword and slit her mouth ear to ear. Some say that the woman was cursed to never die and still wanders the world so that people can see the horrible scar on her face and pity her. Some people claim that others have actually seen a very beautiful young lady who asked them, "Am I pretty?" And once they've replied positively, she's ripped off the surgical mask and showed them her horrible wound. She then asked the same question, and anyone who no longer found her pretty was met by tragic death from her hands. Number 5. The Ghost of Stow Lake. Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, California is pretty well known for its paranormal stories. If you believe locals, it's so full of spirits that you can run the risk of crashing straight into one while jogging. But one ghost story has been the most popular and circulated ever since it appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle in 1908. That's the story of the ghost of Stow Lake. The newspaper piece starts with a man named Arthur Pigeon. He was going just a bit too fast in his car when he was pulled over by the police. But he told the officers it wasn't his fault as he was trying to get away. He claimed to have seen the ghost of a woman at Stow Lake. She had long, fair hair and was barefooted. The legends always claim that this woman was a mother who lost a child, or else killed her child and then herself. Number 4. The Suicidal Boyfriend. Paris in the 1960s, a girl and her boyfriend, both of them college students, are making out in his car. They have parked near a forest so they won't be seen by anyone. When they have finished, the boy gets out to take some fresh air and smoke a cigarette. The girl waits for him in the safety of the car. After waiting 5 minutes, the girl gets out of the car to look for her boyfriend. Suddenly, she sees a man in the shadows. Frightened, she gets back into the car to drive away, but as she does this, she hears a very faint squeak, followed by more squeaks. This continues for a few seconds until the girl decides that she has no choice but to drive off. She hits the gas as hard as possible but can't go anywhere because someone has tied a rope to the bumper of the car to a nearby tree. Finally, the girl slams on the gas again and then has a loud scream. She gets out of the car and realizes that her boyfriend is hanging from the tree. It turns out that the squeaky noises were made by his shoes scraping the top of the car roof. He had hung himself after making out with his girlfriend. Number 3. The SUSCON Screamer. On Suscon Road in Pennsylvania, under what used to be called the Susquehanna Railroad Bridge, yet another of these legends has taken hold. According to many locals, if you drive onto the bridge, turn off your car, put the keys on the roof and wait, you will be able to see the SUSCON Screamer in your rearview mirror. Most stories agree that she is a ghost of a woman who hung herself on the bridge after being dumped at the altar. She was supposed to have screamed as loudly as humanly possible as she jumped to her death. Number 2. The Choking Doberman. One night, a couple who had been out for a few too many drinks came home to find their dog choking in the living room. The man panicked and fainted, but the woman decided to call her old friend, a vet, and arranged to drop the dog off at the vet clinic. After dropping off the dog, she decides to go home and get her husband into bed. It takes her a while to do this, and in the meantime the phone rings. The vet screams hysterically that they need to get out of the house immediately. So without any clues as to what's going on, the couple leaves the house as quickly as possible. As they come down the stairs, several policemen run up to meet them. When the woman asks what the problem is, a policeman gently tells her that her dog was choking on a man's finger, and said a burglar must still be present in their home. Soon enough, the former owner of the finger is found unconscious in their bedroom, the same bedroom they were just about to go to sleep in. Number 1. Bloody Mary. Possibly one of the most popular urban legends told among school children having sleepovers. According to this myth or urban legend, if you turn off the lights, look into a mirror and say Bloody Mary 3 times, then you will summon the spirit of Mary Worth, a woman who was supposedly executed for being a witch. But most people say that they're too scared to even try it, probably making this one of the creepiest urban legends from around the world.